You're listening to From the Horse's Mouth, intrepid conversations with Phil Fersht.
Hello, welcome to the latest edition of From the Horse's Mouth podcast. I'm your host, Phil Fersht, and today joining me is Richard Socher, who's co-founder and CEO of U.com, which is the leading web search infrastructure provider for AI, and he's co-founder and CEO of the Recursive Superintelligence, which is a company building self-improving AI to automate scientific discovery. So on this line of things, I think I might let Richard talk a bit more about himself and his background and the businesses that he's trying to run at the moment. So good to meet you, Richard.
Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for listening. My name is Richard. I'm originally from Germany, did my PhD at Stanford. Had this crazy idea in 2010 to use neural nets for natural language processing. It was a very controversial idea in 2010. It's a very obvious one now. In fact, it's so obvious, I almost wonder if some people should try some other ideas as well. But it's been an exciting last 2 decades in NLP. I even studied linguistic computer science back in Germany for undergrad. But then mostly at Stanford, I started really doing research and invented a few things people liked, like word vectors that are very popular called Glove, and a couple of other papers that led eventually to prompt engineering and essentially trying to unify all of natural language processing in one neural network. After the PhD, I started a company called MetaMind, got acquired by Salesforce, became chief scientist and eventually executive vice president, running a lot of the AI efforts there, starting a research team, working on the suite of products under the Einstein umbrella. And then after 4.5 very happy years at Salesforce Research, where we also invented prompt engineering and a few other things like large language models for protein generation, I felt like the world could do better in search. Search was still mostly 10 blue links, and it felt to me like clearly we should be able to give people just an answer when that makes sense rather than a list of 10 blue links. And so I started working at U.com mostly on consumer. Eventually we realized consumer, the dominance there of Google is very strong, and most people don't change a default setting. And if one is the default, it stays the default. And so it's an uphill battle. But the technology we had built and the index and so on has been very helpful for companies and other firms that want to have their LLMs be up to date, accurate, and have citations. And so after pivoting into that, our revenue massively increased last year. We raised at a 1.5 billion valuation. And it's been very exciting to bring knowledge into LLMs and into people's agents. And then at Recursive, which we just started this year, we're building recursive self-improving superintelligence to really actually allow AI to do this manual research of ideating, implementing, and validating ideas automatically and on its own, given certain environments and goals and rewards that we give it. And so together, it's just a very exciting time to both bring more knowledge to the world that already exists on the internet through search APIs, and to actually push that frontier of knowledge forward with superintelligence.
This is terrific, Richard. I have to confess, when I was a young analyst, sort of around the .com time, I remember when Craig Venter sequenced the human genome using a cluster of, I think, compact servers back in the day. And then later on in my career, I worked a little bit with IBM Watson, where a lot of the tools were being built out, which were quite good at stamping out like bad science and things. But can you talk to me a bit about the technologies that you're using today for scientific discovery and how different they are from, what I was starting on 25 years ago, and how much more capable are they today based on the large language models that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, of course, nowadays you can have a full conversation with a model. It becomes more and more of a coworker, more and more. And this is something I predicted a few years ago when I said everyone will become a manager of AI. It's not just like a simple tool. It is now technology that you delegate certain tasks to. And so delegation actually is becoming one of the crucial capabilities and skills of this new age. The agency, the creativity, and the delegation of different tasks. And so that's probably the biggest change from the past. You had to be an expert. Computer science has been phenomenally good at building levels of abstraction. You used to have to code in assembler, right? Zeros and ones, really thinking about how to shift things around. Then you got to work in C and C++ and Java and Python, and now it's English. And like, I don't know where we can go from there. Like that is sort of the ultimate abstraction level, because language is the most interesting manifestation of human intelligence, and getting computers to be so good now at understanding and producing both language and code is the major difference. AI has always been code, but now AI also can code. And so that's the big sort of why now for Recursive too.
So how is this changing the life of the scientist? Is it that they don't have to be so dependent on technical relationships and their IT people that they did before? They've got more empowerment to sort of just use the software themselves. I mean, how is their life changing as a result of these advancements?
So I think it's interesting in terms of research. A lot of researchers, I think, are doing some of the most important work of humanity. But many people appreciate the outputs of research, but they don't necessarily want to spend more money on research and researchers. And so
Sure.
more and more of us are now becoming like program directors at the National Science Foundation rather than individual contributors. Again, like you now really have to be able to just say, oh, like go explore these 10 different ideas, and then maybe only one will work, and then you go after that one. And instead of you doing one of those ideas, like in math or even in biology, one of those ideas for like 10 years of your life, you just do some of that for a few weeks or months with one of your agents, right? And so you become more and more like an NSF director than a individual contributing researcher, individually contributing researcher. And so I think that to me is the big shift. And honestly, that means we're just making more progress in science. Like we are a fairly small team here at Recursive, and we're seeing just incredible progress. It's as if we're several hundreds of people in terms of the outputs. And so I see that across the board. I also invest at my venture firm called AIX Ventures, and we've invested in like 8 unicorns in their seed rounds. And we're seeing just like the level of sophistication when you're now raising a seed round is much higher. Instead of having a wireframe that you come with, be like, oh, this is kind of what I think the product might be, or here's my high level idea. You should just have a vibe coded V1 of that idea. You can show it to people, and you can already show it to customers. And ideally, customers already said, yeah, we would want that if it existed, right? And so everything is getting accelerated.
Yeah, well, so you have a lot of affiliation as an adjunct professor at Stanford, right? So what's changing
I used
in
to. I don't.
academia? You don't anymore. Okay. All right. So, but I mean, but what's changing, do you feel, in terms of the kids coming out of college today with computer science degrees, etc.? Are they getting skilled differently than they were 10 years ago in terms of how they're approaching AI?
I wish they were. They aren't, unfortunately. I think
Right.
education has to change. I think there's some things where AI is putting a lot of pressure on education, but some people maybe overshoot a little bit. They almost think that all of education needs to change, but actually, there's some skills that even though AI can now do them, we should still learn how to do them ourselves. A lot of training and school and universities around how to be a functional member of our society, how to learn anything,
Right.
right? It's not the particular thing like calculus this and taking a derivative of this that you had to learn. But you're training your mind. You're learning how to memorize things. You're learning how to debate and think on the fly and communicate your intentions well, which will be helpful for reward engineering of AI too. And in many ways, I think of school also as kind of a gym for the mind. Like you're just training to think. It doesn't matter that you're not learning this particular skill that will then later be important for your work. And so at the same time, I think we do need to teach kids more creativity, agency, and the ability to learn with these tools. And so, of course, you can go to the gym and you just like build a massive machine that lifts the weights up and down. Like, I mean, but that's useless.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And like going to the gym and having the machines lift their own weights is like useless. And so I think it's the same thing in school. But the problem is the way we structured school is that a lot of kids think, well, if I can just ask ChatGPT this question and it gives me the answer, why should I study? And it's like, well, you could have asked a calculator too for a certain answer, but we still want kids to have some sense of how to multiply numbers in their heads so that they can, not be fooled easily in the middle of a conversation.
Yeah. I'm having this conversation just today about cognitive issues with people over relying on prompt tools and actually getting these tools to do their writing for them, not just help them with ideas and creativity, but to actually write for them. And now we're getting this sort of like synthesized English that's starting to appear everywhere. And that's, I don't know. I think we're reaching a rather important threshold in how we accept AI generated information versus human generated information and being able to tell the difference between the two, right? So
there's a lot of co-adaptation between humans and their tools and their AIs. And I think ultimately you just have to test students in the classroom writing an essay with no internet access. Like it's not that hard, And so if they cannot do that, then they clearly weren't practicing it. And I think the tricky bit with writing is that very often writing is thinking. Actually, two types of people. Some people think in sentences and some people think more in abstract thought clouds. But for both of them, it's very helpful to put something on a page, to put together a coherent argument. And that skill, I think, is very important for humanity and civilization. So I hope we continue practicing it. And it is, I think, also the case that the more you're forced to have to say novel and interesting things that no one has said before, the less you can actually rely on AI. Like I was recently finished my book that's coming out in September, and a lot of people like asked me like, did you use AI to write the book? And I'm like, I mean, I really tried, but like, if you want to say something truly novel that no one has said before, you just can't do it with AI. You have to write it yourself because the AI will pull it back into the space of things that have been said before.
Hey, you're preaching to the choir. I'm an analyst, and I'm all about the more I use these tools, the more I'm starting to turn them off and write myself. And then I go back to using the tools later because they're very, very good at helping me frame ideas. Stuff like PowerPoint, oh my God, it's like dream come true for me of 30 years of using this terrible application. But it's great to hear that you'll see things the same way as I am. So let's take the conversation down this area of search, which is where you're really focusing on with your U.com business, right? So why does search need to be really rebuilt for the AI era, Richard?
Good question. I think there's really only like one or two well-known large-scale consumer search engines, right? And there's no really strong business on the enterprise side where you can rely on search. It's really Google and Microsoft Bing that have a full search index of the web, but they're not providing useful APIs for everyone else. So if you have your own open source LLM and you don't want to be on that stack, you have to build the ability to search the web into your LLM. Otherwise, it will not be up to date, accurate, and have citations. And then people think, oh, will we search less? No, actually, there will be even more searches because you can ask one agent a very complex question, and that one question can trigger hundreds of searches, right? Like analyze this thing for me, think about rare earth metals, come up with all these different ideas, realize, okay, there's a huge reliance on China. It then double clicks and goes down the rabbit holes, proverbially speaking, for you, and then bring it all back and then summarize the knowledge of the world. And I think that to me is incredibly important, and it's important to get it right and partner with the people that actually then use those web results in a way that minimize hallucinations and all the other problems, biases, and so on that these LLMs have.
Right, right. So where do you see the search world shifting to next? We've been through such a revolution with the use of these tools. I mean, they've transformed how people in their personal lives are functioning and searching for things. We've now got Google as the dark horse in the race, like because of their established base, look like they're going to be a incredibly strong AI-led business at this point. What do you think is going to happen in the next couple of years as a result of everything that's going on today?
Like to all of humanity, I mean, I think a lot of like every industry will change with AI, just like sort of with electricity. I think right now what we're seeing is sort of the equivalent of, okay, you have electricity, but you still have just one massive spinning wheel in your factory. You don't yet realize you can have like handheld electricity and things like that, and it changes all the different workflows within like a factory or something like that. I think a lot of companies are still adjusting. They're thinking about this workflow and that workflow and replace it with AI and this task and so on. I think as the technology becomes more and more ubiquitous and easier to adapt for everyone, it will seep into organizations and then really question existing workflows entirely. Like there's people like reading in faxes and then typing them up, right? And like taking pictures of driver's licenses and then typing them up. Like those things will just like disappear fairly quickly, those kinds of tasks. And then we will see massive transformation in different sectors. So for instance, tech bio, I think there's a big shift. It used to be that bio companies have like one drug, one compound, and they're spent like 10 years, hundreds of millions of dollars. And then by the very end, they're already publicly traded now, the drug just fails, right? And so that has kind of put a damper on the tech bio markets. But we're now seeing startups that have 3, 4, 5, or even 8 different compounds in trials as a Series B startup, right? And so the probability that all of them will fail is very small. And so I think we'll see a whole acceleration in biology. I think generally what calculus did for physics, AI will do for biology. It's the right language for these complex systems and explaining them and describing them and making them from a natural science into an engineering science. And that will change all of health and disease and longevity and so on in the next few years. I think we're seeing already sort of this acceleration of certain industries and countries that have leaned into AI. And we're seeing some folks who want to sort of off-ramp from progress, right? And then it starts to worry me a little bit because there's some really nice people, and I think they don't quite realize what it means to off-ramp from progress. And that will, sort of in comparison to other nations or regions, sort of put them at a massive disadvantage over time.
Right. Interesting.
I could go on. It's a very open-ended question. I could talk for hours on
Yeah.
all the different aspects of life that with AI, but yeah.
No, I like this conversation around the off-ramp from progress. I got a few friends and colleagues who work in the US healthcare system. Some of them work for the big providers as well. And the potential is huge to improve a system where I think the annual spend on healthcare in the US is greater than the GDP of Germany, right? And how do you see the impact ultimately of AI on the US healthcare system? Do you think it's going to fully embrace the capabilities moving forward, or do you think it's going to be a little bit of this off-ramping as we go over the next couple of years?
I do think like the FDA actually has improved quite significantly in the US in recent years, and it's much more sort of future leaning, and And so, yeah, I see, especially in China too, like just a lot of even US companies now like to run their first trials in China because it's so much more efficient, less bureaucratic, and faster. And so, yeah, I do see acceleration in the healthcare space. I see more and more doctors like using AI, right? Like both to do some diagnostics, but like also just to get rid of boring work. Like Ambient's one of our successful investments at AIX. Like they allow doctors to just record the conversation, and so by the end of the meeting, they're done with having it all filled out in the forms and the follow-ups and the prescriptions and so on. They don't need to spend another 10, 15 minutes typing it all up and then filling out the right forms to actually get the prescriptions going. And so these efficiency gains are going to be everywhere, and that will allow doctors to actually spend time with patients, which is what most of them actually wanted to do when they got into the field.
Yeah, big issue with the system out here right now. Okay, so final question then. You've got your book, the Eureka Machine, coming out. You said it's coming out soon, right?
Yeah, in September.
September, fantastic. So, can you maybe talk a little bit about the book? What were the key sort of 2 or 3 takeaways that you'd like our audience here to think about as we wait for the book to be published?
Science has been the main reason humanity progressed so much in so many ways, and there's no material problem that we couldn't solve with better science and more inventions and explanations of our surroundings. The world is getting more and more complicated. Science is fragmenting more and more. And so we need new tools to actually make sense of all of this. That new tool is loosely described as AI, obviously many different variants of it. And AI will allow us to build a new Eureka machine, a machine that will make endlessly many inventions and explanations and discoveries for us. And that will usher in a new area of growth, of health, of wealth, and progress, ultimately for humanity. And then I explain on how we can, build that machine, what the necessary pillars are, knowledge, scientific data, and sort of infusing measurements into this Eureka machine, simulations, anything we can simulate, we can solve with AI. And ultimately real world experiments, potentially supported with robotics, and then having an agent swarm of researchers sitting on top of that. And that will allow us then to think about, what the limits are of intelligence, of longevity, of knowledge along its many different dimensions.
Well, sounds fascinating. And I really look forward to how you define intelligence in the book, and I love the vision that you've been talking about here. So I really thank you for your time today, Richard, and sharing this conversation with our audience. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.